Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
Waiting to rise again.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show. Brought to you by Quirks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
This is the moment you've all been waiting for.
Locking down the middle of the day. Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio downtown in the capital city on this Friday. Things are brought to you by Corks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp. Got Jacob Beck and Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos. And fired up, you're with us here as we're working towards the weekend. Hopefully that work is in the rearview mirror for the week. If it's not, we will get you to the finish line. Preston Guy in 15 minutes talking football. Kind of at this point in the calendar, it's like, okay, what do you want to talk about with LSU football? And I want to talk about LSU's coaching staff. Want Preston's thoughts on it, kind of where things stand. There's a lot of continuity on that coaching staff outside of defensive line, so we'll chat with that with Preston about that. I do want to look at the rest of the SEC series that are coming up this weekend because it's really impactful for LSU, what goes on around the league, because LSU's right in the middle of a big old log jam. Andrew Hutchinson is going to join us at 2:15 to talk LSU and Arkansas. He covers the Hogs for Best of Arkansas Sports. And Derek Carr wants to play in week 1, so we'll talk about that in hour number 2 as well. We'll start things off the same way we start every single show. That's our Genesis opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's opening drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
Let's talk LSU and Arkansas, shall we? We had Koki Riley on Wednesday, as we always do, and Koki, who does a great job covering the team for The Advocate, told us on Wednesday that he had a story coming out today, Friday, on LSU's ineptitude against left-handed pitching. And he tweets earlier today that against Texas A&M, LSU was 18 for 84 with 24 strikeouts against the Aggies. Against Tennessee, left-handed pitching, LSU was 3 for 36. Against Alabama, 7 for 39. All those really, really rough numbers. And since I knew Koki was going to write about that, I certainly wanted to read the story, which I did, and I invite you to do over at The Advocate today. But I also want to dig a little bit deeper myself individually into some left-handed pitching. And I'm putting all the cards on the table here. Like there's some cherry picking going on here by me, because if you put LSU's SEC numbers against left-handed pitching together, they're not quite as bad, because Missouri started 3 left-handed starters, and LSU got after all of them. It was Ian Loesch. LSU scored 7 earned and 3 1/3. Will Libert, they scored 6 earned and 3 2/3. And then Caden Drew, LSU scored 4 earned runs in 2 innings against him. So that's 3 games where LSU handled left-handed starting pitching pretty easily. Cade Crossland pitched for Oklahoma, throws from the left side. LSU tagged him pretty good. 6 hits, 5 earned runs in 5 innings of work. So there's 4 starts right there. Left-handed pitchers, LSU did fine. But if you keep going, which I did, and I'll bring up some of these names, some that you'll probably remember. Like last weekend, you saw Ryan Prager, Justin Lampkin, and Miles Patton. And those guys tied you up pretty good. Prager went 7 innings of 1-run baseball. Against Tennessee, you saw Liam Doyle. You got 1 hit. He pitched into the 7th inning. Pico Khan of Mississippi State, you hit 2 home runs in 5 innings, but that was all the damage that you were able to do. He struck you out 8 times. You didn't walk. Cade Fisher has had a bad year at Auburn. Like, he was Florida's guy, and then he wasn't, and then he transferred to Auburn. He had a bad start to his year. And he pitched against LSU, and LSU scored 1 run in 5 innings on Cade Fisher. Zane Adams has had a bad year for the most part for Alabama. He was their Friday night guy to start. He pitched game 3 against LSU. He's been hit all over the yard. I mean, when he came to Baton Rouge, teams were hitting well over 300 in league play against him. And he went 5 innings of 1-run baseball against LSU. So if you take 7 pitchers, Prager, Lampkin, and Patton from A&M, Doyle from Tennessee, Kahn from Mississippi State, Fisher from Auburn, Adams from Alabama, like those guys are pitching to a sub-3 ERA against LSU. One game I haven't mentioned here was Jared Spencer, Texas's ace, before he went out for the year. He was the ace for the number 1 team in the country. LSU did a good job against him. In 5 innings, they got 7 hits and 4 earned runs. But there have been a lot of left-handers that have given LSU a lot of trouble. And tonight, you're going to see a really good one. Zach Root is tough. He is a transfer from East Carolina, where he was in their rotation last year. He's 6'2", 210 pounds. And you're going to see a real herky-jerky windup tonight from Zach Root. He gets into his windup, he pats the ball into his glove, and there's kind of knees and elbows flying a little bit. He hides the ball well, and he throws 92, which is not an elite-level fastball. But his changeup at 83 is so good that the fastball plays up. And those are his main two pitches. He will throw a big, huge breaking ball. It kind of looks like Jared Poche's, for those that remember. It's just got a ton of downward motion, and it's big and breaking. It's not a sharp, tight breaking ball. It's a big looper. And he'll throw that some, but it's mainly the fastball and the changeup, and you've just got to find a way to be on time. And Texas couldn't. He put Texas in a blender last week. 8 innings, 11 strikeouts, no runs. It was really good. So these struggles that LSU has had a little bit with left-handed pitching are going to have to break free tonight. Like, there's no two ways about it. Because if what you saw against Liam Doyle and what you saw for the most part against Pico Khan and what you saw against Zane Adams and what you saw against Ryan Prager, if that comes back tonight, the results there are usually 0 or 1 run over 5, 6, 7 innings. And you're probably going to lose. Because as good as Cade Anderson is, I don't think he's going to hold Arkansas to 1 run tonight. Like, it'd be great if he does. I'd love it. But that's likely unrealistic against this Arkansas lineup. You're going to have to get to that threshold that we talked about yesterday, because it actually applies to Arkansas as well. It's like a 6-run threshold that you've got to get to. LSU, when they score 6 runs, is 31-1. And when LSU opponents score 5 or less, right there on that threshold, 5-6, LSU's 31-4. In Arkansas, while last weekend they looked like hell on wheels. I mean, they just embarrassed Texas. They haven't done that every weekend. They've done it some. They averaged 10 runs per game in Oxford and won 2 of 3. They averaged 11.5 runs per game against South Carolina and swept them. They averaged 17 runs per game against Missouri and swept them. They averaged almost 10 runs a game against Texas and swept them. But there were those 3 series prior to Texas where Arkansas didn't hit as much. A&M held them to 4-2 in the 2 wins that A&M got in Fayetteville. Florida held them to 4-5 in the 2 games that they won in Gainesville. Georgia, they got into a little bit of a slugfest, and Arkansas did average 8.3 runs per game in that series. But Georgia was able to win a game by scoring 13. They did hold Arkansas to 6 in the other 2. So it's LSU, I think, it would be naive to go into this series, in my opinion, as an LSU fan, thinking we've got Anderson, we've got Ianson. These 2 guys are as good a 1-2 as there is in the country, and we can hold Arkansas down to 2 or 3 runs and try to win 5-3. I just don't know if that's going to get it done this weekend. It might. It's baseball. Weird stuff happens. But LSU offensively is going to have to break out. Like, that's going to have to happen. I detailed back on Wednesday, LSU is scoring about 8.5 runs per game at home in SEC play. They're scoring 4 runs per game on the road. You're at home. Those 8s need to come out. And it's tough to do because Arkansas's got a lot of stuff. You'll see Root tonight. You can read my preview at louisianasports.net, and you're going to see Gage Wood tomorrow. And Gage Wood has some of the best stuff in the country. Gage Wood throws 98 miles an hour and has a vicious breaking ball. But Gage Wood is coming off of a shoulder issue, a shoulder impingement, as it was termed. I don't know what that is, but he had it. And he did not pitch between February 23rd and April the 17th. And so in his times coming back, he threw 20 pitches against A&M on the 18th of April, then 42 against Florida the next week, then 57 last week against Texas. And against Texas, he shut them. He gave up 1 run, a home run, in 4 innings of work, and he struck out 8. So it's wicked stuff, but he's not going 104 pitches. He's going to go, probably the target will be about 70. And LSU's goal on Saturday against Gage Wood is to make sure those 70 pitches only records like 11 outs. Make sure that they don't record 17 outs. Because when you get into the bullpen, maybe it can get a little bit easier. Now, it's probably going to be Gabe Gackle after Gage Wood. And you're going, well, who's Gabe Gackle? Gabe Gackle was their Friday night guy to start the season. It didn't work out as well. His numbers weren't very good. But he was an elite closer last year as a freshman, and his stuff is awesome. So they'll go with Wood as far as he can get him 70 pitches, and they're bringing Gackle in. And those two guys got through 7 innings last week against Texas. And that is their Saturday starter. I use air quotes. It's Wood into Gackle because Wood can't extend as far as a normal starter would at this point in the calendar coming off the shoulder impingement. So those first 3 arms that I'm mentioning, Root, Wood, Gackle, that's your task to start this thing. Probably Beidelshees on Sunday. We'll cross that bridge when you get to it. He's a left-hander, not super talented. But they do have a lot of talent on the mound, and they got a lot of talent in the lineup. And LSU has that as well. I'll leave this early show segment because we got a lot more LSU and Arkansas to talk about later with this thought. And I sent this out on Twitter for those that follow. Cade Anderson and Anthony Ianson over the last 2 weeks have been remarkable against Tennessee and Texas A&M. They have combined to throw 28 innings. They've allowed only 18 hits and 6 earned runs in those 28 innings. That's an ERA under 2. It's 1.93 in 28 innings. They've struck out 45 and allowed 11 walks. So when I say this, I'm not being hyperbolic. Tennessee, Texas A&M, and Arkansas are 3 of the top 5 lineups in college baseball. And you've already seen 2 of them and done what you've done. If those 2 guys show up this weekend and replicate anything like that, 6 innings, 2-run baseball, 7 innings, 3-run baseball, if they do that, there will be nothing moving forward that these guys truly haven't seen. I think the last frontier of this excursion would probably be trying to go to Foley Field and hold Georgia down in a juice box of a ballpark, but that's not on the schedule, so we're not doing that. But these 3 lineups in a row, those 2 pitchers, if they can give you what they had the last 2 weeks, tonight and tomorrow, you're talking about as proven a 1-2 punch as you could possibly have at this point in the calendar, and that's a huge, huge deal. This weekend is so freaking huge for both teams. If Arkansas comes in and wins 2 games this weekend, they have a national seed on ice. That's 19 wins, top 4 RPI. Put it to bed. If LSU wins 2 of 3 this weekend, that pushes LSU to 17 wins, and you got South Carolina, who has basically quit. And you feel like with wins over Tennessee and Arkansas, 17 league wins, at that point an RPI in the top 6, you're pretty much on ice. You've got to go not fall on your face, but you understand what I'm saying. This is as high stakes a regular season baseball as you can really get. You've got a team that has more national championships than anybody over the last 25 years, and a team that's won more college baseball games than anybody without a College World Series championship on the same field. It's LSU and it's Arkansas. It's Alec Box Stadium, one of the most historic venues and respected venues in the sport. It's Jay Johnson, national championship head coach, versus Dave Van Horn, Hall of Famer, who's chasing that first one. This is as good as it can get. I'm super bummed out about the weather as I sit here at 1:15 in the afternoon because I don't know how that's going to impact the schedule and the crowd and the environment and all that. And selfishly, I just want to see that. But the stakes are massive. The talent level is massive. It's awesome arms. It's elite bats. It's future pros. It's great defense. It's an awesome venue. This is why we sign up to do this. And I can't wait to get in the box tonight and see what we see whenever we see it, because these 2 left-handers are going to be pretty quick draft picks. They were both really, really good the last couple of weeks, and they've got a lot on their shoulders tonight facing a couple of good lineups. So big, big weekend coming up, and we're going to talk about it a ton over the next 2 hours. Our Friday shows brought to you by Corks, Cajun Fried Fish and Shrimp. We'll step aside, come back, talk some football. Preston Guy, TigerBait.com on The Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is the website. David Duvall and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. I always talk about renovations and remodels, and that's what they do. And certainly they're not a repair company. But oftentimes there is an issue in your bathroom, especially if you've got an older house, that requires new installation. And what starts as what could be a repair, you realize needs to be a replacement, and maybe an opportunity to just spruce things up a little bit. Don't just call the handyman down the street and have him come over there and try to figure things out, run to the hardware store twice and see if he can get it done. Go with somebody that's licensed, bonded, and insured, and has 30 years of doing this, and that's David Duvall and his team. If you've got a defective tub or shower that you think, it's had a good run, but we got to get this replaced, David Duvall and his team can do that for you. They can customize it for you. Make it look exactly the way that you want. Check out some of their work at onebathandclosets.com. It looks phenomenal. It is phenomenal. And I can promise you this, they're going to do it right the first time and leave the competition behind. That's David's promise to you. So start with that free consultation today with One Bath and Closets. Go to the website, onebathandclosets.com. Have David come in and have a conversation with you. It's One Bath and Closets online at onebathandclosets.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Corks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp.
Friday edition is brought to you by Corks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp. In the mood for a shrimp po' boy today for lunch? Get on by Corks. Government between Foster and Jefferson. They can always hook you up with those fantastic jumbo Gulf shrimp po' boy, crispy fried catfish, great shoestring fries as well. Check them out. CorksFishandShrimp.com. Preston Guy, TigerBait.com. Good enough to stop by on Fridays and chat some football with us. Preston, how we doing?
All right, good. Nice of you to work a Friday this week.
I was just saying that. I think 3 weeks in a row I haven't been here. We had Good Friday, and then I was on vacation, and then I just went to Jazz Fest last week. So, yeah. It's been a minute.
I was here, you weren't, and we took care of business without you.
Yeah, I don't even know what y'all talked about, so I'm going to come up with some topics of my own. We've done a ton of talking about the roster, and I've seen a lot of very, very positive commentary from the national sports folks and analysts about LSU's roster composition for the year. I want to detour from that and talk about the coaching staff. What's your level right now of confidence in Brian Kelly and taking that next step with this group?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm in the jury still out category.
Yeah.
A lot of people really wanted to throw Brian Kelly under the bus for going 8-4 this year. And, getting a look behind the curtain that I've seen with LSU and this new era that we're in, I really attribute a lot of these struggles to, number one, inheriting a putrid roster when he got here. Now, I'm sure people are tired of hearing that. It's year 4. But I'm going to also give another attribution to it's a new era that we're in. And NIL and funds and money talks in a way that hasn't been quite so prevalent in the past. And I think that there was a real learning curve and adjustment period for this team and staff to figure out what they have to do to compete. And I really think they're trending in the right direction in that department. So I still believe that Brian Kelly is a good football coach. I believe he won a lot of games at Notre Dame for a reason, and I believe that Notre Dame is a place that has a ceiling, although there's certainly some question marks about whether or not that ceiling still exists for Notre Dame, given the NIL era and money being able to really, money is more important than geography nowadays when it comes to bringing players in. And I think LSU has better geography, but you have to question if the money is up there with Notre Dame. I think we're definitely getting closer this year, but I still have faith in the staff as a whole. And I guess that starts with Brian Kelly, and he does need to prove it. And he's running out of time before he has to prove it. They really need to put out something impressive soon.
How'd you feel about Joe Sloan's year 1 calling plays?
Yeah, it was a mixed bag. I think he had some rookie coordinator moments, but there were certainly some things I liked. I wish he would get a little more creative in the red zone. I'll stick with jury still out with him too, because last year that offensive line really struggled to run block, and balance really kind of goes out the window in a big way when you can't get consistently. You can't rely on your running game to get you 3 yards. That makes it really tough to call a good offense. I can't ignore the 4,000-yard passer, though. I can't ignore the issues that they had with receivers and injuries that they had last year at that position, and still able to put up a passing offense the way they were able to at times. I'm gonna say that Joe Sloan could turn out to be something good. But they've got to he's got to show more consistency in the red zone with his play calling than he did last year.
As far as the running game goes, because that's really hard for LSU fans to kind of compartmentalize, with the 4 offensive linemen getting drafted, with Will Campbell going, 3rd overall, 4th overall.
Yeah.
The great pass protection, the poor run blocking. I'm curious how you contextualize that, and then whether or not you think the Alex Atkins addition can make a big impact.
Yeah. It is very frustrating, but I think that we saw last year the pass blocking was still elite.
Yeah.
And I think that across the line, 3 out of 4 of those guys weren't great in run blocking at all. And that includes Emory Jones, by the way. I think Will Campbell, when you look at his film, he's probably a little better in run blocking than you remember, but, all it takes is one missed block, and they just couldn't put it together. I think it really reflects strongly on Brad Davis, a lot of pressure on him to really get things straightened out now. Alex Atkins, coaching tight end, you would think helps a little bit, but then you have to worry Trey'Dez Green going out there. He's not exactly a mauler.
No.
He's there. He's very much in the mold of that, stretch down the field, be an athletic player. And we saw him catch 2 touchdowns against Baylor. So you have to wonder between him and Bauer Sharp. Obviously, Bauer Sharp's going to be the more polished blocker. How much can they assist the offensive line? It is a frustrating spot to be in, saying, well, the offensive line was putrid against the run last year. Well, now you have to replace 4 guys and figure it out. All I can tell you is they definitely invested in the portal, and they invested in bright young talent in the freshman class as well. So they're certainly bringing much talent back. But, man, once you layer in how much they struggled in the spring practices to block any of these edge rushers, it really is a concern. I hope there's a lot of shakeup in that unit.
Let's go to the defensive side. Starts with Blake Baker. What is his grade for year 1?
Yeah, I give him a passing grade for sure, like maybe a B. I mean, you got to understand they didn't go in last year. They hired the coaching staff, and they didn't go to the portal like they did this year or in 2022 and revamp their defense. It's essentially mostly the same players from that 2023 team that was historically awful on defense, and they just called a better defense, So he got the same players playing better. Now, this year, you got all sorts of guys. Halsey Gooden they brought in the last, 2 weeks, and, you talk about Patrick Payton and all the big names that they've brought in. I think this is the year where it's like, okay, we need a good, if not elite, defense in Baton Rouge this year. And it certainly has flashed that in spring, especially you look at all the sacks they were able to generate in the open practice. I think we need to see something better. But, yeah, I give him a passing grade for last year.
How much credit do you give Kevin Peoples for Savion Jones having the year he did and where he went in the draft, which stunned me, quite frankly, and then Braden Swenson's emergence in his 5th college season?
A ton of credit for him, because that is Savion Jones is a player who played, he played as putrid as the rest of LSU's defense in 2023. It was awful. He was particularly bad against the outside run, and it just was a really, really big letdown year. So to see really the only difference is the coaching, and defensive end it benefits a little bit from the scheme that you're calling, but ultimately defensive end is a real technique-heavy position. You got to play with leverage, you got to keep outside contained, keep your shoulders square. A lot of that is just fundamentals in coaching, and I think that Kevin Peoples was a huge part of his improvement, and Swenson as well, by the way. Swenson was not an impact. It was not anybody who was on anybody's radar coming after that 2023 season, and he improved tremendously as well. And that's kind of the trend we saw from last year when they improved from, I think it was 108th to 54th in the country. There's a lot of guys who just were playing bad last year that played better this year.
And that's really the key. That's what you need from coaching. Corey Raymond in stint number 2 at LSU. I'm thrilled with the talent level that he's bringing in. Obviously, they didn't play great in his first year last year, but he's still working on getting that talent in. Do you feel like there could be a big step in year 2?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have a lot more bodies back there, and then you add a Halsey to the mix. We'll see how much of an immediate impact guy Halsey is. Obviously, there's, a lot of people are expecting him. Well, he was an all-conference performer. He should be all-conference at LSU. Well, it doesn't always work that way, especially Big 12 to SEC. Not to give anybody PTSD, but Jonathan Giles was a Biletnikoff finalist, and we saw how that turned out.
Yeah.
So that kind of stuff does happen. But that being said, he's got a lot more body. Think about DJ Pickett back there. Think about all the other guys they've got, and they didn't lose a ton back there. He's going to be working with a much more talented secondary, and really, frankly, because of the investments LSU made into its roster this year, that should be the story at a lot of positions. Of you're working with a lot more talent, a much higher projected NFL talent profile this year than we were 12 months ago.
No question. Good conversation, Preston. We'll do it again next week. Thanks, man.
Hunt, see you soon.
Preston Guy, TigerBait.com. Got a lot of LSU football coverage all year round, and he's with us year round on Fridays talking Tiger football. Our Friday show is brought to you by Corks, Cajun Fried Fish, and Shrimp. We'll come back and shift back to baseball. I haven't really done Friday segments about the rest of the SEC very often because I don't think that y'all care a ton about pitching matchups between Oklahoma and Kentucky, so we don't do that. But you're now at a point where LSU is firmly in competition with 3 or 4 other SEC teams for top 8 national seed status, and I think it's relevant to talk about what those teams do and what the matchups look like, plus what LSU's competition looks like next week, which we got to talk about too. So we'll do all that when we come back.
The Hunt Palmer Show. This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Corks, Cajun Fried Fish, and Shrimp.
Friday show is brought to you by Corks, Cajun Fried Fish, and Shrimp. We'll talk some LSU-Arkansas with Andrew Hutchinson, Best of Arkansas Sports, coming up at 2:15. So about 40 minutes from now, we'll chat with Andrew. I think it's very relevant to look around the SEC this weekend as it relates to LSU getting a top 8 national seed. I think LSU has a long way to go to deal with Texas, and you deal with Arkansas here on your own field. So those two, I think, are out in front because Texas has 19 league wins. Arkansas is already at 17. But there's a group of LSU, Auburn, Vanderbilt, Georgia, and Tennessee. 5 teams jockeying for position for a top 8. And LSU is in the middle of dealing with all of those. You're talking about having a disadvantage as far as RPI goes with Georgia and Auburn and Vanderbilt, who are all in the top 5 of the RPI. You're ahead of Tennessee in the RPI, but you're ahead of those teams that that I mentioned at the top 5 of the RPI in terms of conference standing. Then when it comes to Auburn, they swept you, so that's certainly a notch in their favor. We talked about that yesterday. So I sent out a tweet yesterday about 5:45 p.m. Central Time, hashtagging the South Carolina hashtag forever to thee, apparently is what they say. I don't know what that means, but I said it because I want South Carolina to beat Auburn once this weekend. And that seems increasingly unlikely. Why? Because let me read you the results of the last 3 South Carolina baseball games. They lost to Florida 22-3, which is not ideal. Then they lost to Florida 8-0. So that's 30-3 over 2 games. You thought, well, that's about as bad as it can get. Well, that's what you thought. And then South Carolina goes out last night, and man, they were ready to play on the Plains. They come out in the top of the first inning, bang, get a run. 1-0 Gamecocks. That's how you get off the bus. You bring the intensity, and you get on the scoreboard early. Throw the first punch on the road. Auburn's holding their ace, Sam Dutton, for tomorrow. We'll show you. 1-0 Gamecocks. They lost 24-1. 24-1.
I thought it was 2. You got to give them 2 wrong.
They got 2?
I think they had 2.
I quit watching. Well, I didn't watch any.
Let me see.
You got to check me on that. I certainly don't want to short.
That is important, Hunt.
I don't want to. I cut their score in half there.
Yes.
If that's right. Did that happen?
It was 24-2.
Oh, they got one late.
Yep.
Resiliency. I like to see that from my Gamecocks.
Yep.
Well,
they're playing right now.
I know they are. I've got that score ready to update. So that is 54-5. 54-5 over 3 games. And now they're down 2-1 in the bottom of the second of the first game today. So that's 56-6 over the course of 3.5 games. 56-6. I did not watch a pitch last night from Auburn, so I am not speaking from a position of authority here at all. I'm not. This is purely speculation on my part. But I do think it's reasonable to question effort when you are being outscored by 50 runs over 3.5 games. And you know that LSU goes to Columbia next weekend. And if Auburn wears them out 2 more times, certainly there's not going to be anybody in the seats. And what's the effort level like from South Carolina? I'm very, very careful with the Q word. So careful that I can actually point out instances where I saw it. Like, I will use this instance in perpetuity until I find a better one. But Ole Miss's football team quit on Houston Nutt in 2011. They quit. That's the time LSU went up there in 2011 with that great team. Ole Miss threw a pick 6 in the first play of the game, and LSU kneeled with like 5 minutes to go. They were not giving effort. They weren't. You could look at the defensive line. You could look at the offense. Like they were not giving effort. And it's a rare instance when that happens. And I'm not telling you it's happened with South Carolina. But if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, and it's been beat 56-6 like a duck, that's reasonable to look at. Missouri has not quit. Missouri played Georgia tough last weekend. They lost all 3 games, but they also led in all 3 games. South Carolina is losing by 20 on the reg. That's a brutal deal. So if you're an LSU fan, you'd like South Carolina to find some sort of pulse here to beat Auburn once at least, but maybe not. Maybe you just let Auburn sweep them, and then you go to Columbia and sweep them and put them out of their misery. I don't know, but that's one series to keep an eye on. The interesting one that I can't really come up with the rooting interest in is Vanderbilt and Tennessee. My gut tells me that I want Tennessee to win 2 out of 3. That would leave Vanderbilt at 15 league wins with 1 weekend to play to get to a maximum of 18. And you feel like LSU's got a really good chance to get to 18 with 15 already and 6 games to play. And the fact that Tennessee would win that series wouldn't hurt LSU a lot because Tennessee is behind LSU in the standings and behind LSU in terms of they came to Baton Rouge and lost. And they're behind LSU in the RPI. LSU's got 3 legs up on Tennessee. So I clearly want the Vols to win the series because Vanderbilt's RPI is in the top 4. And that's better than LSU, who's sitting there at 8. But it's a massive deal to both teams. They're both 14-10. They're both ranked in the top 15 by the polls. And the loser of that series, if Tennessee loses the series, they're not getting a top 8. If Tennessee loses for the 5th time in 6 series, and the 4th time in a row on their home field, they will not get a top 8. So you can eliminate the Vols if they lose this series. But I'm trying to jump Vanderbilt too. So I think personally, I probably want Tennessee to win 2 games in that series if I got to pick it. Another one to look at is Georgia at Alabama. Alabama is more so on the hosting bubble, and they got to hustle to get there, but more on the hosting bubble than they are. They're not really a top 8 threat in terms of their RPI, and they're 13-11 in the league. But Georgia's tied with LSU in the standings. And Georgia plays Texas A&M next week. And Georgia has a better RPI than LSU. In fact, they were RPI 1 earlier this week. So I'm pulling for Alabama to win as much as they can in that series. I know all you LSU fans have a lot of houndstooth in the closet. I know you love to talk about Denny Chimes, and you love the $1 Million Band and Big Al. These are big pillars of your fandom. I need you to polish all that stuff off and put it on for this weekend because you need Georgia to drop a few. And the Dogs are a very different team away from Foley Field. You get them in Foley, they hit a lot. They hit a lot of home runs. They're a handful to deal with. This one's in Tuscaloosa. So I'm pulling for Alabama to beat Georgia as much as possible. Some more that are very, very interesting. Ole Miss is trying to play their way to the hosting bubble, and Mississippi State's trying to get in. Mississippi State still has 3 with Missouri to play at the end of the season. It's in Columbia, but it is 3 with Missouri. They're feeling pretty good. They got a sweep of Kentucky last week at home, played well in the midweek. Ole Miss is 13-11. They need to get to 16 to feel decent about hosting. Can they get there? They've had trouble with Mississippi State. Mike Bianco's Ole Miss teams in the last 5 years have really struggled with the Bulldogs. Tensions will be high. It's Super Bulldog weekend there in Starkville. So that's going to be a very, very interesting one to watch. And then can Florida climb all the way back? They're playing great baseball, and Texas is probably a little shell-shocked after what happened last weekend in Arkansas. Florida goes to Austin, where, by the way, Texas has only lost 1 league game at home all year, and LSU was the one that beat them with Jared Spencer on the mound. They have won every other home game. Florida goes there. We know that Florida is 10-2 in their last 12 games in league play, and they're knocking on the door of getting back in this thing, but they've got to go to Austin and do something that only LSU has done, which is win a game. Their dish fault. So that's really the interesting stuff from an LSU perspective. Auburn has added a run, so it's 3-1 against South Carolina. They just can't stop anybody ever. It's shocking. And then the other game, Oklahoma is trying to play its way as a host, and then Kentucky is trying to play its way in. Neither of those really all that relevant to LSU. The only thing I will say about it is that LSU swept Oklahoma on the road. So that their RPI boosting may help LSU's strength of schedule a little bit. Tigers obviously did not play Kentucky. Plus, I don't like Nick Mingione because of something that happened 15 years ago. So I think Oklahoma winning is a help to LSU. How much of a benefit? Probably not. But the 3 that do matter to LSU are Auburn, South Carolina, Vanderbilt and Tennessee, and then Georgia and Alabama. You want Alabama to beat Georgia, you want Tennessee to beat Vanderbilt, and you want South Carolina to beat Auburn, even though they probably can't. So that's kind of a run through the Southeastern Conference here on this Friday. There's a lot of early action. South Carolina and Auburn will play a doubleheader today. Ole Miss and Mississippi State have moved their game up to 4 o'clock today. They may try to play a doubleheader this afternoon as well. So everybody's just trying to dodge weather, and that's just what it's been really all spring around here. Just haven't gotten a great weekend to play out at the box, which is a huge bummer. I'm still hopeful that there's an awesome environment in there tonight whenever it is that LSU and Arkansas do play, because these 2 teams and programs deserve it. But weather just makes things tough and something you can't control. So we'll see how things shake out over the weekend. That's your look at the Southeastern Conference on this Friday. Speaking of Fridays, Friday shows brought to you by Corks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp. If you're getting a family gathering, spring's a big time for family reunions. If you've got graduation party that's coming up, you got a birthday party, just looking to feed the office, whatever the case may be, Corks is awesome with catering. They can do the big trays of the Gulf shrimp, big trays of those crispy fried catfish, big old trays of fries, honey butter rolls. They can do it all for you in bulk. They're happy to help you with it. Just give them a little bit of notice, and they can have it ready for you. It's delicious. It's affordable. It's fantastic. Corks right there, Government, Foster, and Jefferson. Been a sponsor here for better than 3 years on the Hunt Palmer Show every single Friday. CorksFishandShrimp.com is where you can find them online. We'll come back and close out the hour next on the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show. You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Corks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp.
Closing up hour number 1 here. I touched on this briefly in kind of my all-encompassing opening segment that talked about the baseball weekend that is to come here with LSU and Arkansas. But I wanted to drill down a little bit deeper with about 5 minutes to go here on Cade Anderson. He's really evolved into a true SEC ace. I saw MLB.com's draft projections yesterday that had him as the 3rd pick in the draft. And he's going to give LSU a great chance the rest of the way. We'll see what happens tonight. He's facing a great lineup. But I've watched a lot of aces come through LSU in the last, let's call it 20 years. I can't go back to the 90s and do this exercise. I certainly know the names, but I can't do this exercise. But I mean, I watched Alex Lang come in, and he was just the ace from the start. He was undefeated his freshman year. He threw a complete game shutout on Saturday of the regional against UNC Wilmington. Like, he was an ace from the second he stepped on campus. Aaron Nola was a midweek starter a little bit, and he helped out of the bullpen early in his freshman year. He went to Tulane and threw something like 28 strikes in a row or something, and was really good, and finally worked his way to the back end of the weekend and became kind of the third starter behind Kevin Gausman as a freshman, and then as a sophomore year became the National Pitcher of the Year. But he was really good at the end of his freshman year, but it took him a couple months to get into the rotation. Kevin Gausman was in the rotation immediately. He had some bumps early in his SEC freshman year, but by the end of the year, now that team didn't make the tournament in 2011, but by the end of the year, he was ready to roll. He was pitching great at the end of his freshman year. And all these kind of routes are winding. Like, Paul Skeens is not comparable to anybody because he pitched at Air Force for a couple years and then came to Baton Rouge. But Landon Marceau dealt with some arm injuries and was an okay pitcher early in his career. And by the time he left that last Paul Maneri team, he was a guy LSU could really count on for 6 innings of 1 or 2 run baseball. And you're seeing a different type of evolution with Cade Anderson, where he came in off of arm surgery and was really good in the non-conference and in the midweek. Like, he dominated Rice, who's not the Rice of old. He dominated Southeastern. But they put him in SEC games, and he couldn't get outs. He just wasn't ready for that. And he pitched really well in the regional against Wofford, but he wasn't ready for SEC baseball as a freshman, coming off injury. But he kept plugging along. And I had a conversation in December with somebody in the baseball program and said, what do you kind of think as far as the front of the rotation? Like, you thinking Nianson's going to take that job? Is Shores? That kind of seems like the obvious guy. And I got looked at just dead in the face. No, Anderson. Anderson's the guy. And that's why when I got questions on Twitter and asked me anything, or I wrote for LouisianaSports.net, you can go read my fall recap, said Anderson is apparently the ace. And that has played out to be true. He's in the top 3 in the country in strikeouts. He's really put some teams in a blender. Obviously, the Oklahoma outing comes to mind, but he was phenomenal against Tennessee. He was awesome last week against Texas A&M. LSU scored 1 run in the game. But he's establishing himself as the guy, and you need the guy. You can win without it. Tennessee won without it last year. They didn't have a dude at the front end of the rotation. But it really helps to have the guy. And Mississippi State didn't have one when they won either. Bednar became really good, but they've had better aces at Mississippi State over the years. Chris Stratton, some of those guys. But having that guy is huge, and LSU feels like has that guy. And you're going to see him tonight with an opportunity against as talented a lineup as there is in college baseball to prove that again, because he did it against Tennessee and did it against Texas A&M. And if he can pass this test tonight, and the same thing goes for Anthony Ianson to an extent, but he's obviously the guy that pitches second on this team. If he can do it again tonight, and then Cade Anderson can strike out 9 and give you 7 2-run innings, at that point, you have to realize that this guy is as good a pitcher as there is in college baseball, and you've got a real chance. Now, I'm not telling you if Arkansas hits 5 home runs tonight and he's gone in the 4th inning that the season's over, but this is kind of the final boss as far as personnel in the other dugout. There are bigger games in a regional, in a super, certainly in Omaha. But as far as the team in the other dugout, it doesn't get much better than Tennessee, Texas A&M, and Arkansas. So tonight, when Cade Anderson takes the ball, you're seeing him against the best. We'll see how he looks against that test. I'm excited to watch it, quite frankly. And we'll see if they get things started at 6:30 tonight. That's it for hour number 1 here on a Friday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. We're brought to you by Corks, Cajun Fried Fish and Shrimp. Always are on Fridays. If you missed any of the first hour, catch it on demand wherever you find your sound. Search Hunt Palmer Show. Like, subscribe, rate, and review. Talk to LSU-Arkansas at the front and back of the hour. Preston Guy talking LSU coaching staff from a football perspective at 1:15. And then we had a little SEC baseball primer as well. Andrew Hutchinson in 20 minutes. Let's talk some Saints after Sports Center. Hope your Friday's going well. Come back with us. It's the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge, genesisofbatonrouge.com. Airline at Piku. You might have never been. You probably never been. Because comparatively speaking, they're new in town. Just over a couple of years at that location. I am blown away by a lot of aspects of Genesis of Baton Rouge. One is the facility. It is first class. It is as clean and as fine and as comfortable a showroom as you're going to find. I'm blown away by the staff. It's a wonderful group of people to work with. You're never going to walk onto that lot and feel pressured or taken advantage of. That's just not going to happen at Genesis Baton Rouge. They are simply there to help. And a lot of folks have gotten behind the wheel of a lot of different cars, makes and models over the year. Maybe you're loyal to a certain brand and you know when you walk on the lot, that's what you want. You may not know much about Genesis. That's what they're there to help you with. Get behind the wheel and see. Just put it on your list. It's a place to stop by. It's Genesis of Baton Rouge. Find them online. genesisofbatonrouge.com.